and welcome in again to another edition of Musings from the Mountains, the video podcast presented by WVSports.com. I am managing editor slash host slash co-pilot of the show, Keenan Cummings, and I'm joined by...
I'm Serre. As always, I guess you could say for all you Star Wars fans out there, I am the Chewbacca to Keenan's Han Solo.
I love Star Wars references. My Padawan too, that would work.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely have the higher ground right now.
Yeah. Let's hope I can keep it at some point. I mean, eventually, the student gets better than the master in most of these situations. So we'll see what happens here. Bye week, as you can tell with our meandering intro. We have a bye week here. West Virginia, no football games. Interesting ratio so far. 3 games, 2 byes. Of course, a lot of that is a product of 2020 in general, with what we're seeing with COVID and the challenges presented there. But we're in another bye week. Interesting news coming out of a bye week, though. I asked Neil Brown yesterday about waivers. Hubbard had announced himself on social media that he had gotten a waiver. He was going to be eligible to play this year. So I said, what's going on with the rest of them? And now we know. West Virginia is going to have Zach Dobson. He is eligible. He's ready to play whenever he's available, I guess. They're going to have Bryce Brand, too. Not next week. They'll get him on the road at Texas Tech. That's when he'll first be eligible. Scotty Young will not. Not necessarily a surprise based on what I had heard. But Scotty Young is not going to be eligible. He's going to be a scout team guy and will be going back and forth, kind of giving West Virginia good looks there. Of those guys, the most experienced, obviously, is Scotty Young, 3-year starter at Arizona, but he won't be eligible for West Virginia. Also thought it was interesting from Neil's press conference asking about recruiting. It's going to be a focus this week. It always is during a bye week. West Virginia has 16 commitments in the 2021 class. They have 5 to 6 spots to fill. You're wondering why? Why is that total so low? Well, we've gone through this before a little bit, but West Virginia kind of took some scholarships from the future to pay forward in the present to get some transfers and some blue shirts, some other guys on campus. So you got roughly 22 scholarships, 21, depending on how they use them. And we'll get into this later. We have a few questions that we'll get to, but we'll see how it's filled. Anything from that press conference other than those things stand out to you?
Not really. I mean, you touched on it. It is a bye week, so there's, it's a lot of Coach Brown talking about here's what we suck at and here's what we're going to work on over the next week and a half before we play Kansas. I think the important thing, I guess the fun thing to think about now is where you see guys like Hubbard and Zach Dobson, where they and Bryce Brand, where you see them kind of actually playing roles as we get into the remaining roughly 2/3 of the season. But I mean, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot to me that stood out yesterday.
I do think I'd like to mention the fact that West Virginia head coach Neil Brown did say that had what not happened to James Gamitter happen, we were going to see a different offensive line. Chase Barrett was working at guard and tackle throughout the week. So it won't matter now. He said they've nixed that idea. They're going to keep him on the interior, probably keep him at center, but possibilities maybe down the road if things don't go right for West Virginia, they can move him around. And that was something that we had bantered about a little bit on the blue lot. He's a guy that could potentially fill in at that right tackle spot if they have issues. We're 30% done with the season right now, which is kind of crazy because it doesn't seem like they've played 3 games. I know I was going on about that ratio, but still, it does not seem like they've played 3 games. Who's your standout offensive, standout defensive player through 3 games?
Well, I'll start on defense, and I mean, this might be low-hanging fruit, but I mean, you guys have all seen it. I am incredibly high on Tony Fields, the linebacker transfer from Arizona. He is a hell of a football player. He is leading the defense. I think 3 weeks in a row, he's been, the top tackler, or at least in the top 2 or 3 on the team. He is probably the closest thing to a sure thing there is on that defense. Him and Darius Stills are a hell of a combo you've got together, both 2 NFL guys. He's definitely been – Tony Fields has definitely been a critical piece to this defense. And, he's a huge reason as to why West Virginia is currently 2-1.
For me, defensively, I think Tony Fields is probably the obvious choice, but I really like what I've seen out of Alonzo Adai too. A guy that I was kind of, I don't want to say worried about, that's not fair, but you thought that maybe Scotty Young was going to fill that free safety role, or maybe some other guys were going to fill that free safety role. He's not only filled it, he's played well pretty much every game. First game was absolutely exceptional. Hasn't done anything yet to make me believe he's not going to play well. I think you got to give some credit to the guys up front too. I really like what I've seen out of Darius Stills, especially the last 2 weeks. It's hard for a nose guard to show up the stat book, but I guess if you play Baylor, it's not if you're Darius Stills. But he's looked really well offensively for me. I think this is. I don't know how you could give it to anybody else. I think it's Letty Brown so far. He's if you're going to pick an MVP for every game this season for West Virginia, it's been Letty Brown. Yes, the offensive line is blocking better. They're getting targeted up. They're moving people in the run game way better than at any point last year. But Letty Brown is still making a lot of yards himself, a lot of yards after contact. I think it's over 50% of his yards right now are after contact, and he's doing a phenomenal job, with contact balance, moving forward, and he's always falling forward, even on plays that last year might have lost 2 or 3 yards. He's now gaining at least a yard or getting back to the line of scrimmage. And that might not seem like a lot, but over the course of a season, you add that up. Losing 3 yards a carry or a net gain of 1 or 0 or, it fall even. He already has 320 yards rushing at 367 all of last year. I don't even think I need to ask you here, Jared. I mean, do you agree with me, or could you see something else?
I'm 100% with you, Keenan. Letty Brown is a stud. At least, the difference, the strides he's made this year compared to last year, he's a completely different running back out there. It makes me think a lot of the Detroit Lions, how, they always have struggled with a run game and their offense really hasn't been able to really work that well. And that's been a thing that's happened for years with them. For West Virginia, you see they finally have a run game established this year as opposed to last year, and their offense just looks completely different. Now they do have their struggles, elsewhere, but it truly is a completely different offensive attack that they've got going for them, and I think that is critical. And it will continue to be critical as they head down the stretch of the season, taking on teams like Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, who would have thought before the year we'd be talking about how effective West Virginia's inside run game has been and how inefficient downfield passing has been. If you have a concern right now, mine is just kind of the passing battery in general. I never thought I would say that coming into the year. I thought I saw a lot out of Daggy last year to make me feel confident. I know you were losing the 2 tackles, but I didn't think it would be that big of a struggle at times. The receivers have not played up the potential, especially on the outside. They've had moments of brilliance and then moments where you're like, what are you doing? So I think that's my biggest concern is West Virginia going to be able to effectively generate some plays down the field? They hit 3 in the first game over 20 yards. They're 0 for their last 11, I believe, against FBS teams. That has to improve. It's going to get a lot harder to run the football if you can't stretch the field. And West Virginia's had some opportunities. They just haven't been able to hit on them. And not only not hit, a lot of them haven't even really been close. So figuring that out is going to be a concern. Any your major concern?
I don't like to pick on specific players all that often, but I mean, a guy like Sam James, when he is on, Sam James is on. He is a hell of a football player. He has all the skills. The main issue last season was the drops. And, we said, okay, well, if he can get those drops, if he can improve on those, then, he could be an all Big 12 wide receiver this year. And, he still has a long way to go, I think he is critical to the offense. If he can get those minor drops figured out, it is again a completely different offense. That's a whole nother step that Jarret Doege and Jared Parker and Chad Scott can take to really stretch the field, have every part of the offensive attack firing on all cylinders. That's just something that they really need Sam James to kind of step it up and fix those miscues.
Yeah, we're going to close it out here with a couple questions. WVSports.com premium message board. Number one, I'll ask the question. Jared, you can either answer it or pass it to me. Will Jaquay Hubbard play now that he has been given his waiver?
I'll go ahead and take this one to start off. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would like to say yes, just because, this year is a throwaway year in the sense of nobody loses eligibility. If you've got him, if you've got him, why not? He could definitely use the benefit of, the game situation of playing in Coach Brown's system. Um, yeah, there's really not much more I can say about it. I mean, unless it's you're in a situation where you really need your top guys out there. Why not play Jaquay Hubbard?
Yeah, I think that some people are assuming that because he's a transfer, he's going to come in and play, start immediately, run away with that job. And I just don't think that's the case. You got to remember, guys, he's a redshirt freshman. He's missed time away from the team, dealing with the family matter. He was already showing up late to begin with. So I think that, yeah, you might see him at some point. I'd be really surprised if you see him they relying on him to start, at any point this year. I think I'll take this one, Jared. I'm not sure it's really your expertise here. Do you think that West Virginia only takes 4 more commitments and holds on to the other couple next spring to see what needs are there in the transfer portal?
Yeah, you can take that one, Keenan. That's all you.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't want it. Yeah, I do. I think West Virginia will probably add 4 to 5 guys and then save 1 or 2. That's typically what Neil Brown does. He likes to have that flexibility. And of course, guys, you got to remember they can always borrow from 2022. You don't want to continue to do this because you're taking away from your future classes. But with the new changes to the scholarship limits, well, whenever those are official, and depending on what happens there, you might not need to add as many players. You're already going to have every player back for another year anyways, and possibly even some seniors that you thought were graduating. So it becomes more about balancing where your needs are as opposed to balancing out where your classes are, because that's going to work its way out, over time anyways. So yeah, I do think West Virginia will probably add 3, 4, maybe even 5 guys, but I'd be shocked if they didn't save at least 1 spot and then keep some open just in case they want to add some guys in some alternative ways.
Yeah, and real quick, if I can jump in. Speaking on adding some guys, I still have eligibility left. I'm a junior. I'm already on campus. If Coach Brown is looking for a depth piece, tell him that my DMs on Twitter are open.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'm not sure where you playing at though. Are you like a Charles Woodson? You can go anywhere.
I'm 6'3", 235. I can play wherever you need me. Hand me the ball, I'll run into the D line.
There you go. Of the transfers that were able to get eligibility, which one was the neediest? And by that, this person's asking, which one will have an immediate impact? Well, unfortunately, the one that would have had the greatest impact is not eligible. That's Scotty Young. He's a 3-year starter. He would have played. Of the guys that are eligible, I think it's you take out Hubbard. I don't think that he's going to be a major factor. If he is, I mean, I'll gladly crow. But I don't think he's going to be a major factor. I don't ever predict young offensive linemen to make giant impacts. Zach Frazier is definitely the exception to the rule. It's probably Bryce Brand for me because he was already in the mix in fall camp. He was working with the second team unit there at that bandit position. Vandarius Cowan's been dinged up. You could see Zach Dobson too. He's an athletic wide receiver, guy you can get in space and do some things, but that's a crowded room. Bandit's not as crowded. I mean, it does have some depth now, but a lot of it's young. Your take as well?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I definitely think it's Bryce Brand. A guy like Dobson, is athletic, Tevin Bush clone, I guess you could say, but that is a deep room, and I really don't see Zach Dobson getting that much run this season unless it's in the return game. But I mean, again, Alex Sinkfield, when he's not being run into by his own blockers, has done fairly well in the return game. So who knows? We've still got 7 games left. Who knows what will happen?
Yeah, it is the Wild West this year, guys. That is the one thing I will emphasize is you're going to see a lot of things this year that you typically would never see. Freshmen playing in high leverage roles. You got to get these guys time. It's a free year. Why not take advantage of it? You want to win football games, but you also want to prepare your team for the future. Thank you for tuning in again. This has been a fun edition. We will take your questions again. As soon as you get them, just throw some questions our way. We'll work them into the show. Sometimes we will answer them. Sometimes we'll laugh at them. Sometimes you'll make us look dumb, but that's the fun of it. West Virginia will play Kansas October 17th. It's a noon kickoff, high noon. Everybody loves noon. Journalists do like noon, but no one else likes noon.
I only like noon for deadline, but I mean, as a college student, a noon Saturday game after a Friday game or after a Friday night is no good for me. I will not take that.
No bueno. But this was bueno. And tune in again to the next episode. This has been another edition of Musings from the Mountains.